There is a specific kind of silence that only exists at 3 a.m. For most, it is the sound of deep sleep, but for those working the night shift, that silence is often a warning. Tonight, we explore 3 true accounts from people who thought they were alone on the clock. From empty corridors that are not so empty, to security cameras capturing things that simply should not exist. Grab a coffee, lock your doors, and stay alert. Because after these stories, you will never look at an empty hallway the same way again. They always tell you that the night shift is easy. They tell you it is just you, the silence, and the occasional traveler passing through. But they never tell you about the things that travel when the rest of the world is asleep. My name is Elias. 3 years ago, I worked at a gas station on a desolate stretch of highway in Nevada. The nearest town was 40 miles away. The desert was my only companion. It was a Tuesday, 2 a.m. The wind was howling outside, kicking sand against the glass windows. I was behind the counter, lost in a book, when the bell above the door chimed. I didn't hear a car pull up. In that silence, you can hear a radiator humming from a mile away. But there was nothing, just the chime. I looked up. Standing in the doorway was a man. He was wearing a heavy dark trench coat, despite the desert heat. His skin was pale, not just white, but like parchment. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the floor. "Can I help you?" I asked. My voice sounded thin in the empty store. He didn't answer. He started walking. But his walk, it was wrong. His knees didn't seem to bend. It was a stiff, rhythmic lurching. He headed straight for the back of the store, toward the coolers. I watched him on the overhead monitors. He stood in front of the milk for 5 minutes, just standing. My skin began to crawl. I reached under the counter and gripped the baseball bat I kept there. "Sir," I called out, "we're closing the registers for maintenance in 10 minutes. Finally, he turned, but he didn't look at me. He looked at the security camera, directly into the lens, and he smiled. It wasn't a human smile. It was too wide, too many teeth. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Buzz, buzz, blackout. The store went pitch black. The only sound was the wind outside and the heavy thumping of my own heart. I pulled out my flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, shaking in my hand. I swept the light toward the back of the store. He was gone. The coolers were empty. The aisle was empty. I felt a cold draft, like someone had opened a freezer door right behind my neck. I spun around, swinging the light. Nothing. Then, I heard it from the back office, my private office. Tap, tap, tap. Someone was knocking on the door. From the inside of my office, I knew I was alone in the building. I had the only key. My hands were sweating so much I almost dropped the flashlight. I walked toward the office door, inch by inch. "Who is in there?" I shouted. The knocking stopped. A low, distorted voice drifted through the wood. It sounded like a recording being played at half speed. "Elias," it said. "Elias, you forgot to lock the back gate." My blood turned to ice. I had locked it. I remembered doing it at midnight. I gathered my courage and kicked the door open, ready to swing. The office was empty, but the computer screen was on. It was playing the security footage from 5 minutes ago. I saw myself at the counter. I saw the man in the trench coat. But on the screen, the man wasn't standing in front of the coolers. On the screen, he was standing right behind me at the register. His long, pale fingers were hovering just inches away from my neck the entire time I was talking to him. I didn't wait for the lights to come back on. I ran to my car and drove. I didn't stop until I saw the sun rising over the horizon. I never went back for my last paycheck. A week later, the manager called me. He said they found something in the store. On the back of the office door, there were deep, jagged scratches, not from a tool, but from fingernails. And written in the dust on my desk were 4 words: "See you next shift." The first shadow is past, but the next one is already here. Listen. Living alone in a smart home was supposed to provide me with a sense of modern security. I had invested in everything: high-definition cameras on every corner of my property, motion sensors on every window, and a smart lock that logged every entry. I felt like I was living in a fortress. I could monitor my entire world from the palm of my hand. But I learned the hard way that sometimes seeing everything is the greatest curse of all. My name is Sam, and this happened during a cold, foggy week last October. I lived in a renovated farmhouse on the outskirts of a small town, a place where the nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away. It was a Thursday night, around 11:45 p.m. The house was dead silent, save for the rhythmic creaking of the floorboards as they settled in the cold. I was upstairs in my bedroom, tucked under the covers, scrolling through my phone to unwind before sleep. Suddenly, my phone vibrated, a sharp, mechanical chime that felt unusually loud in the stillness. I looked at the screen. A notification from my front porch camera. Person detected. I opened the app, my heart giving a small, nervous skip. Usually, it was just a stray cat or the branches of the old oak tree swaying in the wind. But when the live feed loaded, the air left my lungs. Standing on my front porch, directly beneath the flickering light, was a man. But he wasn't moving. He didn't look like a burglar. He looked like a ghost from another era. He was wearing a suit, a very old, tattered black suit that looked like it had been buried in the earth for decades. It was covered in streaks of dry mud and dead leaves. He was standing so close to the camera that his face filled the screen. His skin, it wasn't human. It was gray, cracked, and stretched tight over his bones like wet parchment. He didn't knock. He didn't reach for the handle. He just stood there, staring directly into the lens with wide, unblinking eyes. I felt a paralyzing chill crawl up my spine. My fingers shook as I reached for the two-way talk button. I tried to make my voice sound firm, but it came out as a broken whisper. "Can I help you? I'm calling the police right now. Leave my property." The man didn't flinch. Instead, he slowly tilted his head to the side, like a curious animal. Then, he leaned in even closer, until his gray lips were almost touching the microphone. He whispered, "I like the new books on your nightstand, Sam. The one about the deep woods. It is a fascinating choice." I felt the blood drain from my face. My nightstand? My curtains were heavy and tightly closed. There was no way anyone outside could see in. I scrambled out of bed and crept toward the window. I peeled back the edge of the curtain just a fraction of an inch. The porch was empty. The gray man was gone. I looked back at my phone. The feed still showed him standing there, smiling. A wide, horrific grin that revealed jagged, yellowed teeth. Then, I saw the timestamp. The video wasn't live. The app had frozen 30 seconds ago. Suddenly, a new sound erupted in the house, a heavy, wet thud coming from downstairs, the sound of stiff, heavy footsteps on the hardwood floor of the kitchen. Chime. My phone vibrated again. Movement detected in hallway. The hallway camera feed came up. There he was, standing right outside my bedroom door. He looked up at the camera, raised a long gray finger to his lips, and whispered, "Shh, I'm already home." I heard the doorknob turn. Click. I lunged for the window and jumped. I hit the grass hard, my ankle snapping, but I dragged myself through the dark until I reached the road. When the police searched the house, it was empty. But under my bed, they found a small, hand-carved wooden doll. It was wearing a tiny, tattered suit, identical to the one the man wore, and it was covered in fresh, wet dirt. Attached to the doll was a small piece of paper with my name on it. I never spent another night there, because I realized that technology doesn't just let you see the world, it lets the world see you. And sometimes, something out there has been waiting a very long time to come inside. We are going deeper now, down to where the light cannot reach. Stay close. My name is Marcus, and I used to chase shadows. Not literally, of course, but I was obsessed with forgotten places, with the whispers of history buried under layers of dust and time. My passion was urban exploration, and my latest fixation was the Blackwood Mine. It was an abandoned coal mine deep in the Appalachian Mountains, shut down in the 1950s after a series of unexplained collapses and strange disappearances. Local legends warned against it, spoke of miners who never returned, of eerie sounds echoing from its depths. To me, that was an invitation. On a cold, overcast Saturday morning, I packed my gear: industrial headlamp, backup flashlight, a portable oxygen sensor, a sturdy rope, and my trusty GoPro. I left my truck at the overgrown trailhead and began the hike. The entrance to Blackwood Mine was a jagged, gaping maw in the mountainside, framed by decaying timber supports. It looked less like a mine and more like a wound in the earth. The air immediately grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp rock and something else, something metallic and ancient. I took a deep breath, switched on my headlamp, and stepped into the darkness. The tunnel immediately narrowed, the timber creaking ominously above me. My headlamp cut a lonely path through the absolute black. The silence down there was suffocating, broken only by the drip of water and the crunch of loose shale beneath my boots. As I ventured deeper, the temperature plummeted, and a strange cold mist began to swirl around my ankles. I checked my oxygen sensor. It was fluctuating wildly, showing unstable levels. This was highly unusual. Then I started hearing them. Faint whispers at first, like wind whistling through distant cracks. But they grew clearer, forming words I couldn't quite grasp, just on the edge of my hearing. It felt like voices, mournful and pleading, coming from deeper within the rock. I tried to rationalize it, air currents, echoes, but the feeling of being watched intensified. My flashlight beam danced across crude carvings on the mine walls, desperate tally marks, scratched warnings in archaic script, and one symbol that made my blood run cold. A distorted, elongated figure with too many limbs pointing into the darkness ahead. I felt a growing sense of dread, a primal fear that had nothing to do with falling rocks. I pushed forward, driven by a morbid curiosity, until I reached a cavern where the whispers became clearer. They were calling a name. Marcus. My name. I spun around, my headlamp frantically searching the blackness. Nothing, just shadows. Then, my headlamp flickered and died. Absolute darkness. The whispers erupted into a cacophony of screams, not human, but something ancient and agonizing. I fumbled for my backup flashlight, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. When I finally switched it on, the beam revealed something that will haunt me forever. Standing at the very edge of the light, barely within its reach, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, and its skin was the color of damp clay. Its limbs were too long, jointed at unnatural angles. Its face was a void, just two empty black holes where eyes should be. And from its chest, where a heart should beat, long, thin, metallic tendrils slowly pulsated. It wasn't moving towards me. It was just standing there, swaying slightly, its black gaze fixed on me. And then it whispered, directly into my mind, "You brought us light. Now stay." I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just turned and ran. I scrambled back through the tunnels, slipping on the wet floor, barely seeing where I was going, the echoes of those screams chasing me. I didn't stop until I burst out of the mine entrance, gasping for air, collapsing onto the forest floor. I never looked back. I sold all my exploration gear. Blackwood Mine isn't just a place where coal was dug. It's a place where something ancient and terrifying sleeps, and it doesn't like being woken up. The darkness has a way of following you home. It stays in the corners of your eyes. It waits in the silence between your heartbeats. If these stories made your skin crawl, then you are not alone. There are many more shadows to uncover, many more whispers to hear before you look behind you. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. Join us. If you are brave enough to face what lurks in the dark, sleep well, if you still can, and I will be waiting for you in the next story. Goodbye for now.